600 men stand on a crumbling stone wall, looking out over a sea of 16,000 enemies. It is an impossible number, a mathematical certainty of death. In the cold, rain-choked dawn of 1426, the English Empire in France is a fading dream. Its legendary conqueror, Henry V, is 3 years in the grave, and the iron grip he once held over Normandy is beginning to slip. To the west, the horizon is a forest of banners and spear points. The Constable of France, Arthur de Richemont, has brought a hammer to smash an ant. He commands 16,000 soldiers, a pride of high nobility, and a train of 14 massive cannons that represent the absolute peak of 15th century destruction. Inside the fortress of Saint-James-de-Beuvron, the English defenders are trapped, isolated, and marked for extermination. They have no hope of relief and no path for retreat. They are cornered, but they are not yet defeated. What is about to happen in the next few hours in this muddy corner of the Norman frontier will become a legend. It is a masterclass in professional discipline and a victory so lopsided it will leave the French army shattered and the borders of Normandy secure for a generation. This is the moment when the few stood against the many and rewrote the history of the 100 Years' War. This is the story of how a small garrison saved Normandy. The tragedy of the year 1426 begins with a betrayal. For years, the Duchy of Brittany has been a cautious, weather-vane ally to the English, but the political winds have shifted. Duke Jean V of Brittany, a master of survival, has seen the growing strength of the French cause and torn up his oaths to England. This single act of diplomacy has turned the western border of Normandy into a jagged, bleeding wound, opening a new front for invasion. Suddenly, every village and town on the frontier is in the crosshairs. To punish this betrayal, the veteran English commander Sir Thomas Rempston leads a desperate, lightning-fast raid deep into the heart of Brittany. He reaches the capital of Rennes, plundering and burning, a sharp reminder of the cost of breaking faith. But the raid has done more than just take booty. It has awakened a giant. Arthur de Richemont, the new Constable of France, vows to land a war-altering blow. Richemont's wrath is a wall of steel moving north. His first strike at Pontorson is a dark omen. When the town falls, he does not take prisoners. He orders the execution of every English soldier who survived the assault and the systematic demolition of the town's walls. This is no longer a war of territory or chivalry. This is a war of extermination. As the remnants of the English forces fall back to St. James, they know there is no surrender waiting. Sir Thomas Rempston is an Agincourt veteran who has spent his life in the service of the House of Lancaster. He is a man of cold calculations, and he knows that his 600 professionals are the only things standing between Richemont and the total collapse of English Normandy. By the final days of February, the siege of St. James begins. Richemont invests the fortress with a host that defies description, establishing a city of white tents that stretches to the horizon. The local bourgeois of Rennes have heavily funded the campaign, sending a mountain of supplies, hundreds of lead mallets, thousands of iron-tipped bolts, and over 100 pounds of high-grade gunpowder. For 7 days, the earth literally shakes. The air is a thick, choking fog of sulfur and masonry dust as the 14 cannons pound the stone walls. The English defenders work through the nights, using timber and earth to shore up the gaps, living like valiant lions. The French bombardment is systematic, eventually chewing 2 jagged breaches into the northern and western walls. The gap is open. The invitation for slaughter is written in broken stone. Inside the town, the tension is a physical weight. The 600 men of the garrison, a mix of hardened men-at-arms and the elite longbowmen, check their strings and sharpen their blades. They know the sound of an incoming assault before it begins, and the air is thick with dread. These are not the feudal levies of the French, but a professional standing army in all but name. Many of the archers bear the literal scars of their trade, their bones remodeled by years of pulling bows with draw weights that would snap a modern man's arm. They hear the rumble of thousands of boots, the rhythmic chanting of war cries, and the heavy clatter of armor. They are outnumbered 26-1, but they are fighting for the right to exist. The morning of March 6th brings the final test. The air is cold and the river Beuvron is swollen and angry from spring rains. Richemont gives the signal for a general assault. A wave of 16,000 men surges toward the breaches, a tidal wave of humanity screaming for blood. The English response is a disciplined, rhythmic death. Longbowmen on the towers unleash a storm of arrows, volley after volley, 100 shafts every few seconds, striking like modern bullets. The French front ranks are mowed down like wheat, but the sheer mass of the army pushes forward, the men in the back trampling the bodies of their comrades to reach the stone. In the breaches themselves, the English men-at-arms form a solid wall of plate and steel. The fighting is hand-to-hand, a chaotic melee of maces, daggers, and fire in the choking dust of the wall. For hours the garrison holds. They are exhausted and bloodied, but they do not break. But numbers are starting to tell. The English are at their limit, their strength sapped by hours of brutal combat. The French press forward, determined to force a foothold in the jagged stone gaps. The sheer weight of the 16,000-strong host seems destined to overwhelm the 600. Then, in the heat of the slaughter, the psychological dam begins to crack. A returning detachment of French scouts is spotted in the distance, and the smoke of battle distorts the truth. To the jittery, untrained Breton militia in the French rear, these returning scouts are not friends. In the smoke and confusion, a terrible mistake is made. A single, terrifying rumor takes flight. Salisbury is here. Suffolk has come. The names of the most feared English generals, the men who turned Verneuil and Agincourt into graveyards, rippled through the French host like a physical blow. The fear of being trapped between the fortress and a phantom relief army turns the assault into a rout. The militia, seeing their own scouts and believing them to be the vanguard of an English legion, turn and flee. The entire French front begins to dissolve in terror. Sir Thomas Rempston is a predator who recognizes the scent of fear. He sees the momentum shift and does not simply wait for the enemy to leave. He roars the command to throw open the gates. Open the gates! 600 men, driven by the audacity of the cornered, charge out into the chaos. They are no longer fighting an army. They are hunting a mob. The English professionals slam into the rear of 16,000 fleeing men, turning a failed assault into a desperate race for survival. The French flee toward the Beuvron River, but the geography of the valley is now a silent executioner. The river is swollen by spring rains, and the only escape routes are narrow, treacherous causeways. In their panic, the French and Bretons crush one another, creating a bottleneck. Hundreds of men are forced off the narrow paths and into the deep, flooded waters. Weighed down by 50 pounds of plate armor, they sink like stones. Their screams bubble into silence in the cold river as the Beuvron is choked with the bodies of the invasion. Nicholas Burdett leads a pursuit of just 80 men that harries the remnants for miles, turning a retreat into a catastrophe. By nightfall, the invincible French army is gone, leaving their cannons in the mud. The aftermath of St. James was more than a victory. It was a strategic miracle. 18 enemy standards and 14 abandoned cannons stood as silent witnesses to the lopsided slaughter. Within days, the actual English relief force arrived to find the frontier secure and the enemy shattered. The Duke of Brittany, terrified by the sudden collapse of his host and the vulnerability of his own lands, crawled back to the English, begging for a truce and recognizing the English king. This single day of combat froze the Western Front of the 100 Years' War. It bought the English Regency the time it needed to consolidate rule in the heart of France and refocus its depleted resources. While history often remembers the grand campaigns of kings, it was the courage of 600 professionals on a broken wall that saved a kingdom. They proved that tactical brilliance and raw nerve can overcome any odds, ensuring the western border remained closed for years. On March 6, 1426, Sir Thomas Rempston didn't just win a battle. He wrote one of the most incredible chapters in the story of the Middle Ages. They stood their ground when the world expected them to fail, preserving Normandy for at least another generation. It remains a testament to the power of a few dedicated men against the weight of an empire. On that rocky spur, English steel and Norman stone held fast, and the invasion was broken forever. If you found this story of resilience and tactical brilliance inspiring, please consider subscribing and hitting the bell icon to join our community of history enthusiasts. Your support allows us to continue uncovering these forgotten turning points of human history. Let us know in the comments what other forgotten battles you'd like to see us cover. Thank you for watching, and remember that sometimes the smallest force can change the course of an empire.